Hi everyone, I'm going to do a quick little video on how to write our formal report for the lab that we just did and where to find all the information for it. So I'm going to start off on our Canvas page. And if you go to modules and then scroll down to experiment 39, this is going to have all of the links for everything that you need to access. So we're just going to go through them one by one and talk about how to use them and what is in them. The first two that are on here are going to be the most useful for you. So that's where we're going to start. So I think it's this one. That's our rubric. Oh, you know what? I think I need to open this one up still. Okay, so this one is just labeled as the information page, and it is experiment specific. Most of the stuff that's on here is a little bit more general, but it does apply specifically to experiment 39. So the first part up here is general stuff that we already know. We're going to stay in third person and past tense. And then the rest of it is the content for the report. Oh, my cat Ty has decided to join. So you're going to start with the title and your name and address. So we write this as if it was a journal article. So for the address, you're going to just put the school's address, because if you were doing research, that's what you would do. If you ended up working with a lab partner, then you would include their name as well. And you would put a star next to your name because you would be the main author. And then you're going to have an abstract. So same as what you've been doing all semester. And then the rest of the sections, you're going to label them with bold headings. So the introduction is why we did the experiment, the reaction, the mechanism, talking about it a little bit. And then we always want to relate it to something outside of the class. So you need to connect it to either somebody else that's doing research in chemistry or something in society. So look up the molecule you made, the molecule you started with, the type of reaction that we did, something just to give it a bigger picture. The experimental section is your procedure, so what we did. So past tense, third person, you need to use your real experimental values. So if the lab told you to use 0.1 grams, but you actually used 0.093 grams, then 0.093 grams should be what's in your lab report. You also want to include hazardous warnings for anything that was hazardous, and then what we did with our waste. The results section is your data. So for this one, it's going to be the mass, the percent yield, melting point, and then your IR table, and then calculations for the theoretical yield and percent yield. Discussion section is putting meaning to all of that data. So you're going to compare your results. Melting point and IR, it does say NMR here, I forgot to delete that, but melting point and IR to the literature values, and then your actual yield to the theoretical yield. And then just a couple questions to kind of help you with that. Did you have impurities? Did you have any unreacted starting material? How do you know you made that final product? And then you're also going to answer 2 questions that are in the lab book. My goodness. They're on page 352, questions number 2 and 3. Both of them have to do with the double bond that we created. We made a trans double bond. The questions are asking you to draw the cis and the trans, and then asking you, using IR, how would you tell the difference between the two? And then how could you improve for next time? Your conclusion is literally 2 sentences. The first sentence is, what was the goal? And then the second sentence is, did you achieve the goal? You also need at least 4 references. Your references, though, can be your lab textbook because you didn't come up with the procedure yourself. So reference the lab book. It can be your lecture book for getting information about the reaction. And then for the other stuff, you have to look up our reaction for that bigger picture idea. So there's a third reference, hazardous information, hazardous materials. There's a 4th reference. So getting the actual references isn't too horrible. I'll talk about how to cite those. So you need to have a reference section at the end, but you also need to do in-text citations. Down here is giving you a little bit more information on how to present the non-text things. So reactions and mechanisms, you need to use a chemical drawing program for those. And then any figures, they need to have a number. So like figure 1 with a title, and then tables as well. So table 1, results from experiment 39 would be a completely acceptable title. Okay, other documents. So the next one that's on the list is the rubric. So it looks like this. So similar to the take-home test, I don't ever want anything to be a surprise. So I have everything that needs to be included, but also how many points it's worth. So really the document that we just went through, this is essentially the same thing, but in a table format, and all of the points associated with it. So it's a total of 75. One thing I did not mention is that you do need to attach your IR. So you can embed it into your report and make it smaller, scan it in there, or you can just attach it to the end, either way. Okay, let's see, let's get rid of that. For your paper itself, we use an American Chemical Society template. So I have this template on here as a Word document. So title, author, address, and then as you scroll through it, it has the formatting that you will need to follow, which is having it in these columns, justified, the font and the size are set in there. You can see that there's a figure with a title underneath. There's a table with a title above. So as you're writing your report, you're just going to type it into the template, and you'll keep the formatting that is presented here. And then when you're done, you can delete all of the text that is included. I know that this button says click here to remove. It doesn't work. It never has worked. Oh, that was my rabbit in the corner. If you have a Mac, you will want to click on the other link, and it takes you to the ACS website. So it has a link for the download for the Mac version of the template, and that one will be helpful for you as well. Okay, let's talk about how to cite your sources. Let me get rid of this page. So this is one of the links on there as well. It's an ACS citation guide, and it has how to cite a book. So you'll probably need that for your lab book and lecture book. If you scroll down to the bottom, the last thing is how to cite a website. So who wrote the website? So whether it was a school or organization or even just a person, the actual website itself, and then the date you accessed it. Of course, we only want to use reputable websites. So anything that's .edu, .gov, Wikipedia is actually a good website, but you can always look at Wikipedia's sources as well and use those instead of the direct one. For in-text citations, there's 3 ways to do it. All of them are correct, but be consistent. So pick one and stick to it. The superscript numbers, you're just putting a number at the end of the sentence as a superscript, and then when you have your reference section, you would just number them. The parenthesis version's kind of the same, but you're just putting your reference as a parenthesis at the end of your sentence. And then the last one is author name and year. This one might be a little bit harder if you're using websites as your sources, because they often don't have an actual author, but also acceptable. Because of that, though, I would suggest probably using one of the other ones, just because it might be a little bit easier. Okay, the other things that were on the experiment page were some samples. So one of them is an actual ACS article. It was some COVID research, and so we have all the authors and their schools. We have an abstract, introduction, some pictures with the figure 1 and the title underneath, a results section. So they have all the same sections that we're doing. Theirs is definitely going to be a lot longer than what we are writing, but just so you can kind of see a very official one. And then the other ones that were on there are students from past semesters. So these are not perfect grade papers, but it gives you an idea of how other people have done it or how they have formatted it, just kind of what it looks like. And another thing to keep in mind is that I do change the requirements every semester or every couple semesters just to kind of improve things. So you might see things that are done slightly different in these lab reports just because their requirements weren't the same as yours. So keep that in mind as you're using them or looking at them, that the way that you're writing yours might be slightly different than what they are doing. And then I think the last thing is I had said that you need to use drawing software to draw out the reactions and the mechanisms. So this is in our first module. I'll show you where to access it in a second. But if you scroll down to the bottom, it has links to 4 different free drawing software programs. A couple notes on each one, just whether I've used them or what would be helpful, like Marvin Sketch specifically is a really good one for Macs. Because they're free, you can't always copy and paste from them, but you can do a screen grab and then crop it so it will fit into your report a little bit better. And then to access this, it's right in this first module right here, useful links. So I think that that covers everything. Let me go back and just double check here. So the information, the rubric, and the template are going to be those most important items. The last 3 that are on here are just some samples. And then you have that reference guide for all of your, for your references. Your paper itself doesn't have like a word limit or a page limit. Usually they're 2 to 3 pages. It's just, you know, and as much space as it takes for you to report everything. If you have questions as you're doing it, or you want me to read a rough draft, I would be more than happy to. I think that's all though. So have a great spring break and use it to get some rest, as well as hopefully get a little bit caught up on work if you need to. All right, I will see you guys in a week.